मासाप्तयुगकल्पेषु
मासाप्तयुगकल्पेषु
गतागम्येष्वनेकधा
गतागम्येष्वनेकधा
नोदेति नास्तमेत्येका
नोदेति नास्तमेत्येका
संविद्येषा स्वयं प्रभा
संविद्येषा स्वयं प्रभा.
So in the last few verses, starting with verse number 3 up to number 7, what was intended to be pointed out is that in terms of things that are not changing and those that are changing, there is something amongst those things, there is something which doesn't disappear. But this is something we have to slowly get acquainted with. We don't, it is such a massive error that not a casual error. And so if you look at the 6 billion people, other than a handful, their life just goes on with the conclusion that really everything is changing. And even you and I are all changing. Ourselves are also changing. We are a little bit more stable than our experiences. The experiencer is a little bit more stable, but also changing because we are growing old and we're liable to disappear. So you have to include that as well. And so everything is changing. This is how our conclusion is. It's a massive error. So there, it is pointed out that in and through that, please get acquainted. Start the acquaintance. Get to know it by following the teachings that are just foolproof. Trust us. Dangerous words. Everybody can say trust us, and so on. But really just start to trust the truth about yourself. And that is that you need to get acquainted by your personal experience by something that doesn't change. So this was the message for the last few verses that we have taken. And so that had actually two components to it. One component is the isness of samvit, the presence of samvit, the isness of samvit, satatvam of the samvit. That put your attention to the fact that I am doesn't change. What I am changes. See, what I am is a changeable thing because I am young, I am old, I am happy, unhappy, all those kinds of things is what I am. But in and through what I am, I am. And the massive error we have is that we just neglect it. We say, oh, what are you talking about? So what? So what does that have to do with it? I am. Of course I am. So what? So this, we kind of go past the very truth about it. So the idea is that you first get acquainted by the fact that the samvit does not change. So this is one aspect of this last few verses. The second aspect of the last few verses is not only that I am, but that I am conscious. I am awareful and constantly awareful. It's not I'm changing awareful, coming and going. So through all of this teaching and through our analysis and through our experiences, all three things, remember, Shruti, Yukti, and Anubhava. So all three of them are important filters that the truth must fall through. Shruti is important because there is nothing that will tell you this. See, this is what we were going to talk about this in the last Gita class last Saturday, and there is a verse number 39 which is going to come up, and it says, Shraddhavan eva labhate jnanam. This is the important chapter 4, number 39. So in commenting on that, it was very interesting. Swami Maheshananji had pointed out, I'm giving you the idea about the Shruti, the authority, the vachan, the talking of the truth by the authority of Vedanta Shastra. So their commenting out was that the way we lead our life is through Shraddha. And Swami Maheshananji had pointed out that, for example, when you're hungry, then you have Shraddha that by eating some food, this discomfort will be gone. And you will not have the Shraddha unless you've had some previous experience. From your previous experience, you know that whenever you feel hungry, you go for some food and now you are okay for a few hours. This is your experience. So now if you get hungry, you have the Shraddha that yes, all I need to do is to eat some food. And your Shraddha is strengthened even more. So what it is saying is that the Shraddha that we have in our life is due to our own experiences. Our own experiences are our teacher. If that is the case, here comes an assertion that you are different than what you think you are. You are not a limited individual subject to problems, but in fact you are away from it, and in fact you are unlimited. Even time and death does not touch you. And also dukkha, the day-to-day problems, also doesn't touch you. This is the assertion. Now for this assertion, where is your experience? How are you going to accept this? As you do when you go for a food to take care of your hunger. There you have experience which is a Shraddha, which is your own experience. Here, and not only this, but you can ask anybody else, hey, is this true? And they'll all say, what are you talking about? I don't know what, this is a crazy stuff that I am unlimited and so on. No, not possible. So there are some technical words to define this. In the Shankara Bhashya for Brahma Sutra, he uses the word naisargikaha. And another word used is apurvaha. So apurvaha is actually a little bit easier to understand. Apurvaha means that one that has no parallel. And nothing as like that has been available. Brand new information. And so the Shraddha for that requires a lot of really blind faith almost to a point. But we say, okay, you try everything else Okay, if you don't want to have Shraddha then in us, then try everything else. And people do. But this is what is called Shruti. Then through the Yukti. The Yukti here also is important, really. I'll just give you one example of that to see. So the Yukti is, so for example, from these 3 or 4 verses that we have done, we have concluded that the samvit is always is. The isness is not changing. So this will get more clarified to you as we proceed. You will see this very clearly, more and more clearly. Even now I think you do, but you'll see much more clearly. So the astitvam, the isness of samvit, is one aspect. So now the yukti comes in. Yukti means that in your experience, the isness of things is dependent on some factors. This is the assumption in our life, that anything that there is dependent on other things. You know, so for example, the very classical example. So in the case, take table for instance. The tableness depends on the plastic not giving away, the legs also holding up. So there is a karana karya sambandha. There is a connection between cause and effect, and the effect is dependent on the cause. Okay. So now, if we were to take a krama, take a sequence, what we will find is that any definition of something which is, this is yukti. I'm following the path of what yukti means. We've already done the shruti. Now let's look at the yukti. In the yukti, the means logic. Yukti means logic, reasonableness. So the yukti means that anything which is must be dependent on something. So now we say that samvit, which is Atma, which is you, which is I, it always is. So the question is, how can that be? Because if anything which is dependent on other things is vulnerable, because if other things disappear or change, here also if there is an earthquake and this whole thing falls down, the tableness is gone. So it is very vulnerable. So similarly, why is Atma also not vulnerable? How can you say it is always there? So there we say, you are absolutely right. You are correct in starting the assumption that astitvam must also be dependent. However, look at it this way. This krama, that this depends on, so for example, you say, I am dependent on my body-mind. How did that come about? Because of my birth from my parents. How did the parents come about? Because of the birth from their parents. And how did it come about? And so if you keep on going and you say, which is the very first one? Then you say that some forefather, that's something. So how did he or she come about? So then we say that really, if this is the situation where you have this sequence that never ends, you will not have the Srishti. You will not even have the Srishti, because things are still going on and nothing has been ascertained and so on. So from logic, from yukti, it should be clear to you, consistent with the Shruti, that something must be swayam siddha. Because if there is no Swayam Siddha means that one which is independently is. Because if the independence isness is not established, and it may be assumed for a moment, you may feel that I don't quite buy this at this point in time. I'm willing to look into it. That's okay. But unless you define Swayam Siddhatvam, unless you have self-existence, the whole you can logically prove that the whole creation will not be. Why? Because it is still happening. It is dependent on something else. You'll never be able to prove who was the first one. So this is yukti. Okay, then comes anubhava. And anubhava is more difficult because here you cannot you do not have the anubhava of astitvam and the fact that that is not reasonable, that is not possible for you as an anubhava. But here Ishvara is also very kind by giving you deep sleep. In deep sleep you find, as the logic of when you wake up from it, from the memory of it and so on and so forth, that you are independently is. See, for example, in the waking state, you can say that I am because I'm dependent. I can hit myself, I can squeeze myself, I can do this. Therefore I am. Swami Dayanand used to say that. Somebody says, "Are you there?" He says, "Let me ask my wife." So and this is why you say that when you go to, supposing you have a medical problem and you go to a doctor, you can say, "How am I?" But you cannot say, "Doctor, can you tell me if I am?" No, it is not. So anubhava also is consistent with that. And you can have doubts about it. How is that possible? How is that I'm independently there and so on and so forth? But the resolution of the doubt is along the lines of Shruti. The Shruti says, have Shraddha in the Shruti, that it is apurva, has not been told anywhere before, but this is the truth. And then you follow it with yukti and anubhava. So now we have covered one of the two segments so far, which is the astitvam of the samvit. The second part is that the samvit which is also conscious without changing. The consciousness is unchanging. Here also the same thing happens. Same anubhava, etc. you have to apply. And so there we took the example of the sun. That things are lighted up, but who lights up the sun? And there it was said that really speaking, the sun does not need to be lighted up. No. We need to, just like all the rays of the sun also light up everything, we have to have the rays of the sun light up the sun itself. No, it doesn't apply because the sun is Swayam Prabha. It is self-lighting. It is self-sensitive. If it had consciousness, it would be self-conscious. And the sun is very minor. It is very, very gross compared to you. It also actually depends on things for the hydrogen and explosions and so on and so forth. Atma is the ultimate Swayam Prabha. It does not need anything. Just look, just examine that. When you say I am, your awareness, you don't work for awareness. You are the awareness and naturally awareful. Just look at that. And awareful of everything. Awareful of things that you know. Awareful of things that you don't know. Awareful of things that you're not sure whether you know or not. The whole shebang is awareness. This awareness is self-existing and self-luminous. So this is what we had covered so far in terms of what we have to do to get acquainted with it. We are not acquainted with it because we just go past it. We don't stop to look into that. Anyway, so this was now covered. So now we have a new topic which we will cover with verse number 8. So this is up to verse number 7. Okay? Now we have a new topic. So far, in Sanskritam, the Satrupata. Satrupata means that the very essence of beingness, isness. And Chitrupata means the very essence of being illuminating by saying, I know. It's just a very beautiful thing to see that I know is not something that you have to, as I said, you have to work for or to inherit or to be dependent on. You are I know. I knowness is your swarupa. You are the very essence of I knowness. So this is what is called Chitrupata. So now we have covered two things, Satrupata and Chidrupata. Now we start a new topic which is Anandarupata. We explore the topic of joyfulness. So, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Satchit Ananda. These are the three aspects of the reality of Ishvara. Ishvara and you are both are Satyam. You are awareful, Jnanam, and you are unlimited. You are joyful. Ananda Rupata. So the Ananda Rupata of Samvit is now the topic that we would look into in verse number 9, which will complete this troika of the three aspects of the self, Samvit. So here, making a comment, Swami, and I completely agree with him, that Swami Maheswaranji says that the Chitrupata and Satrupata are relatively more straightforward to understand. Anandarupata is a little bit more, requires more effort on our part to do. Now, Swami Vidyaranya has devoted the last 5 chapters of the 15 chapters on Anandarupata. So we're going to go, we won't have the time in this class, but if you wanted to pursue it, you could actually go through the last 5 chapters of Panchadashi. But here, an introduction to Anandarupata is being given, because this whole chapter is for introducing the very concepts, which will be later expanded. Okay, so let's go into that. So you can just follow and chant after me. Iyamatma parama paranandaha.
Iyamatma parananda.
Parama premaspadam yataha.
Parama premaspadam yataha.
Manabhuvam hi bhuyasam.
Manabhuvam hi bhuyasam.
Iti prematmaniksyate.
Iti prematmaniksyate.
Let's do it one more time. Let's do it one more time. Iyamatma paranandaha.
Iyamatma parananda.
Parapremaspadam yataha.
Parapremaspadam yataha.
Manabhuvam hi bhuyasam.
Manabhuvam hi bhuyasam.
Iti prematmaniksyate.
Iti prematmaniksyate.
So in this verse, two aspects of Ananda are pointed out that are just absolutely marvelous. If you do the Viveka. So the whole question is we need to do the Viveka. Things are all mixed up and we don't understand. We cannot, just like for example the Atma, Anatma is all due to Aviveka. So it's really Viveka and all throughout. So even here also, in pertaining to our nature of how we are happy. This is what is being talked about. The nature of being happy is also due to aviveka. The way we lead our life is because our sources of joy and the non-sources of joy are all mixed up. So we need to look at the understanding of how to do the viveka. That viveka takes two forms. One is the first line, the second one is the second line. The first line is Iyamatma paramanandaha parama prema aspadam yataha. Okay, let's just pause at that. Let's not even go to the second line yet. Let's just go to that. What it says is, with the first one, Paraprema aspadam yataha. This Atma, which is actually he's now, I don't know if that's the first time he's used the word Atma. Maybe, I'm not sure. So far he's using Samvit. Very, very possible. Yeah. I don't think he's used the word Atma. He's used Samvit, but it's the same thing. So he says that Iyam Atma, this Atma means that this you is the source of total joy. So follow all this very carefully. We're going to lead you through this Viveka. Is the source of unlimited joy. Paranandaha means, Anandaha means just joy. Paranandaha means ultimate joy, total joy, infinite joy. So it makes a statement. Iyamatma paranandaha. Then the second part of the first line is the logic. Paraprema aspadam yataha. Because it is the source of your love. Paraprema, it is the ultimate source of your love. Aspadam means the very locus. That's a good word. Aspadam means the very locus. The very source of the joy is paraprema. Because, anyway, we'll go into that. Because it is the source of your joy. Okay, so far just words. Now let's understand what it means. So, Ananda means you go after things that give you Ananda. We analyze our behavior and our life and so on and so forth. The way we are leading our life, the way we have experiences, that we go after things that give us joy. And so also, and so that means you never go after something. You go away from something. Just the opposite of that is, you go away from something that gives you dukkha, some problems. And you go after things that give you ananda. So this is the logic. Okay? This is the logic. Now, let's introduce the second line, and we may interchange both of them because both are, even though separate, they are separate concepts, but they are both related to each other. So let's go into the second line explanation, then we can go into complete conceptual explanation. Second line is, Mana bhuvam hi bhuyasam iti prema atmani ikshyate. So now, before I do the word-by-word translation, the second concept is, what is the first concept? The first concept is, you don't go after something that does not give you ananda. This is the first concept. The second concept is that you never want that source of joy to ever go away. They're two separate but related things. One is that the logic is that it is known throughout, and this is a natural law. It's not that it's taught in India or here that, and not taught to babies, that babies, you need to be happy. No, you don't need to teach anyone. This is natural to us. That ananda gives, we love something if it gives it ananda. This is what is called prema aspadam. Prema means, so the word prema, which means love, requires both the person and something that you're going after, a connection. So, so for example, when you say, I love, so the natural question is, love what? You can say, I am in love, and stop. You have a little bit more time, and the other person says, okay, after a while, he will tell me who is in love with. So there also, it is just a little pause. But the question is, the very word love means it has an object to it. That doesn't happen when you say, I'm happy. See, in happy, there is no connection. But in love, there is a connection. So now look at this first concept. The first concept says that you will have a love with something that makes you happy. This is what it is being said. Yamatma paramanandaha parama prema aspadam yataha. That means that the prema aspadam yataha is anandaha. So we leave out the words parama. Para. That will come a little bit later on when the prior definition of samvit, which is the unlimited, I can even give you a hint now, the unlimitedness of the samvit, because it is constant, swayam prabhaha swayam bhuhu, that gives the definition of para. But you leave aside the para for a minute, the basic concept is you do not love something unless it gives you happiness. This is the first concept. Then the second line of the concept is that you cannot ever wish for your ananda to ever disappear. This is the second concept. Because you can theoretically come up with a definition that the first concept is that even though I love something that gives me ananda, but I don't want it all the time. I can be happy once in a while, that's okay, because I like to be unhappy also. We need to give equal time to everyone. Sorry, it doesn't happen. So there are two dimensions to it. So the second dimension is that having ascertained that my love is only for my own ananda, the second part is that may my ananda and therefore my love for good things may never end. May it never end. So he says, mana bhuvam, hi bhuyasam. May I always be, and may it never disappear. So this is the prema. And by definition and extension, this cannot apply to any anatma. Why? Because if my love is with anatma, then I cannot expect anatma, means not me, to ever be an everlasting source of happiness. Not possible. Having made that mistake, you cannot correct it by saying, may the anatma always be with me. Not possible. Because, and in fact, your identification with the body mind itself, it becomes an anatma. So anyway, we'll go into that later on. So these are the two main concepts. Okay? So now, and one thing that comes about is that one doubt comes in. And Swami Maheshanji gives a beautiful doubt. He said, on these religious occasions, sometimes they have this huge puja and so on, and they give you beautiful prasadam, payasam and kheer and so on and so forth. And on that day, you are keeping an Ekadashi Vrat. Okay? So now there is a violation of this concept. What is the violation? The violation is that you see a kheer or a payasam sitting right in front of you, well prepared by the most wonderful lady cook in town. You know that. This is and you want that because you have a love for, because it will give you ananda very soon. Very soon, as soon as you eat it. But you don't eat it. So there is a violation. You said that anybody that has a source of ananda, you'll go for it. But this guy decided, I'm not going to eat it because it's an Ekadashi Vrat. Why? Because the fellow says, by denying myself this, I will violate my Ekadashi Vrat, but I want to go to heaven. And Ekadashi Vrat, who is, like I've been told, will improve my chances. I may not guarantee it, but it will improve my chances of going to heaven. And I was, I think in one of the 2 Saturday classes, I brought up this. I hope I can publicly say this, but I'm not. This is what I've heard, that in Islam, they say that you need to be a complete teetotaler because your chances of going to Bahisht that has all kinds of rivers of alcohol are improved. You'll have plenty. He says wait. So this is true for Hindus also. Islam takes it to an extreme, but it's the same thing. You can deny yourself you can violate the first concept, but only we really don't violate that because you want something, better. So there also the desire is that I will be very happy later on, not now. So this is one of the doubts that was brought up here. Then so now we have another doubt. This is a very famous story and a very famous doubt about the Rishi Yajnavalkya. So this is in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. And so the very story goes, the story itself is not relevant to this, but I'll just say that anyway. So one day so Yajnavalkya was both a king and a rishi. And he had 2 wives. 2 wives. Actually, this was, I'll give you something just, I read some humorous story by Swami Mahesharanji. It's completely unrelated to this. This is completely unrelated to this, but I'll just take a break and give you that story about the 2 wives. That's what reminded me. So there was a businessman that had 2 wives. And they were always complaining that you're spending more time with the other wife and you're not giving me this, that, or the other. And the other one says, no, that's not true. I saw you with her. So there was a big conflict. So finally he said, okay, this is enough of this conflict. We're going to have a system. And the system is that from 8 to 12 during the day, I will be with wife number 1. And from 12 to 4, I will be with wife number 2. And in the evening, we'll all be together. This was the system. So one day, the guy came back from the office. He goes to office early in the morning. He has his own business. And he is late coming in. And he's not home by 8 o'clock. So breakfast, etc. is all forgotten. He comes home at 10 o'clock. And now the other wife is calling him, you've got only 2 more hours left, you better come over at 12 o'clock. So the first wife says, no, you haven't spent my full 4 hours, that's not possible. So the 2 of them are now fighting, and they are just physically they're doing, and this guy says, come on, we'll figure something out, and so on. So all this was going on in the evening. And they were upstairs, so they came down the stairs. Behind the stairs, they found that there was a man. And they say, what are you doing here? He says, well, I'm really actually a thief. And I came to do some stealing, and I saw this was going on. And so forgive me, but I'm really a thief. So they took him to the police thana and said, lock him up. And so he says, okay, you can lock me up, but please do not give me 2 wives in my life. He says that is the worst thing you can do. Anyway, so Yajnavalkya had 2 wives. So one day he decided he's going to take sannyasa after doing that. So there he called both of his wives. And so there's a lot of story behind all of this. One of the wives was a very outwardly successful person. She was managing all of the things and so on and so forth. She was a big executive of his estate and so on. And the other one was a very simple lady, and she was used to studying and so on and so forth. And so I forget the other lady's name unless somebody can remind me, but anyway, Katyayana. So he announced to everybody that I am leaving. And so Katyayana said, okay, fine, you're leaving, that's, I'll take care of your estate. So then the second wife, Maitreyi, said, you're leaving? Why? Where are you going? So he said, I'm going to take a sannyasa and so on. So he says, why are you taking a sannyasa? And you're leaving us behind. Are you telling me that sannyasa is better for you? Because I have a lot of respect for you. And if you chose sannyasa to this, that means sannyasa is better? Explain that to me, how that is the case. So then he actually teaches her the concepts of Vedanta. In the concept, this is a very important concept that he teaches. He says that you don't love anatma for anatma's sake. You always love anatma for atma's sake. So when you say, I love that person, so two people got married and they've had honeymoon and the wife is in love with the husband. This is so wonderful, this is the best thing that has happened to me, and so on and so forth. And one day he found that he gets angry and he beat her up. So she said, oh, that's too bad, I still love him, but I hope that he doesn't do that again. Then he criticizes her cooking all the time. You didn't do this, it was not tasty, and so on and so forth. And Swami Maheswaranji says that, these are all his examples. He says that in India, when these things happen, the wife continues on. Here there's a straight divorce. In India also divorces are starting actually very, very much. But in India it goes on. Why does it go on? Because she thinks of her future, especially in Swargaloka. She says, my father gave it to me, it is my duty, whatever it is, this is my luck, I have to go through with it. And for the sake of children, for the society and so on, and Ishvara, she will do more puja part, and she somehow tolerates it. But anyway, going back to the story, if this continues, she does not love the husband anymore. Why? Because the husband is no longer a source of ananda for her. So therein is a very important lesson that we should think about. We should think about, and we should see how our life is. And here is a very great lesson for us. Look at this very carefully. So the way we conduct our life is that our reference point is always the Atma. And we measure our experiences with respect to this unchanging reference point. Look at this. Supposing, see all of this is an explanation of concept number 1 on the first line. Supposing you say that unless there is an exception like the one that we talked about, the kheer on this religious day, that's a separate thing. Those are exceptions. And there's some more exceptions that are coming in a minute. I'll show you. But the rule is, which is a reference point, that I conduct my life with respect to a search for an unchanging ananda for me. If somebody treats me well, I love that person. If doesn't treat me well, I reject that person. But in rejecting the person, the assumed reference point is that I am in love with myself. Isn't it? Because let's look at the opposite to this. Supposing you say, you know what, it doesn't matter. I love that person, even though he makes me very unhappy. Very unhappy. That can only be because of some, tolerance. He's not happy. And so same thing on this example of the Ekadashi. It's not happy not to have a kheer, but you postpone it for the future. So there also, the vision is for the self. So this is a very important thing, that without choosing, without making, it's not as though some people do it this way, some other people, no. The Atma is, your first love is to the Atma. You know what that means? It means that your love for your Atma must be because Atma becomes a source of ananda for you. This is very important. You never waver from this. Never waver from this. So here, an exception. Somebody raises a hand, he says, sir, this rule doesn't apply. People commit suicide. Why do they commit suicide? Because it violates the rule, so you cannot have this rule everywhere. So we say, you know what? It does not violate. Does not violate. Swami Maheshananji gives this one example. So in Delhi we have the Qutub Minar. So just like you have Golden Gate Bridge from where people jump to their death, this is a favorite place, and this is a huge problem because it's a very favorite place for people to commit suicide, and they're raising the marks on both sides, but nothing is working. People jump over it. In Delhi, Qutub Minar is such a place. I don't know if you've ever been there, but you will go around the thing, and this, the stone wall is very low. And you can go up to about 5th or 6th story, and then you can just jump over it without any problems and just whap, that's it, you're gone. So this friend of his, these two guys, he was saying, you know what, you could tell from him that he says, my life is ruined and I'm just going to commit suicide. So he says, no, please don't do that. But he says, I've had enough. I'm just going to do that. So he's going up, and this other friend is thinking, my God, in the next few minutes, my friend is going to be dead. So he's talking to somebody on the cell phone. And finally he said, hey, don't jump. She has agreed to marry you. So he says, really? So he goes down the steps again. So there also, this is Swami Maheshananji's example. So Swamiji says, look at this. He really doesn't want to commit suicide. It's just that he thinks he cannot, the foolish guy thinks he loves this girl so much that his life will be ended if she doesn't accept his marriage proposal. And so therefore he's very unhappy. And he thinks that death is better than, because he inside actually, this is a very interesting thing. I also feel the same way. If death was a reality, we would not take it so lightly. But we take it very lightly. The way we deal with it, the way people and so on and so forth. Why? We are absolutely sure there is life after death. And I want that. I don't want to be an unhappy person. So there also, suiciders are not a exception to the rule. So Yajnavalkya therefore teaches to his wife Maitreyi that, listen, you need to understand that Atma is the ultimate source of joy. And the reason we need to understand that is because your love for Anatma comes and goes. Your love for the Atma is naturally present. Naturally present. Okay, now, where are we in time? So therefore, another thing now, we can add the word para based on what I said earlier, that if you add the adjunct para means absolute, unlimited, natural, not nothing, no beginning or end. That's the word, that's the meaning of the word para. So if you add that adjunct to the two concepts, one concept being that please see that you do not love anything which does not give you joy. Okay? And you find that you love your Atma. You love yourself. Naturally. You're not taught about it. It's not somebody does it. We've already talked about the exceptions. So it is without fail, everyone loves their Atma. What does it prove? It's just that we don't get acquainted with this. We have to think about it. What it proves is that I must be the ultimate source of joy. Why do I love myself? Because it's not as though sometimes I love myself, sometimes I don't. Again, leave aside the exceptions we talked about, because the exceptions also don't violate it, because you're simply making a down payment towards a better future. That's all. Otherwise, it doesn't violate. So, the love for the Atma, which is natural, shows you that Atma must be the ultimate source of joy. And the second concept also, para can be used there also. We haven't really used it, the first one also. The first one would be that it is the ultimate, means it is an unchanging source of joy. Why is it unchanging? Because it is Swayam Siddhaha and Swayam Bhuhu and Swayam Prabhaha. Unchanging. Now then, the second concept is that your second desire, that may this source of joy never leave me, is only possible to be applied to the Atma. It can temporarily apply to Anatma for a few days, a few moments, a few occasions, and so on and so forth. That's okay. It's kind of like symptom hunting. but the swarupa is that your desire that it may never leave me can only be supplied to you if the vastu is para. You look at that. Okay, having said all that, I think we have completed with that. Now comes the important question. Sir, if that is the case, right? If that is the case, if I am the ultimate source of joy, and I am the unchanging source of joy, then why is it that I don't go after myself directly and I go after these silly things in life? Why is that? If I can understand your logic. I can even understand Shruti, I can understand Yukti. From logic, I also understand. Yes, this is true what you said, concept number one, concept number two. The question is, I don't have that experience. Because why is it that I run after objects? Why don't I just directly appreciate myself and be done with it? There is a big problem here. So this is another important topic which is briefly mentioned here, but will be expanded greatly as we study, and perhaps even in this chapter, I think it will be brought up again. My recollection is I have to really go through the whole chapter one more time to recollect all the things that are covered in this. And I think this is covered. But if not, then certainly you'll have to go through some other texts and so on and so forth. But you will get an introduction to it this way. Okay? So that is the next topic, the last topic. It says the reason is that this reality about the Atma being the source of joy is covered up for you. It's called avarana. Avarana means that it is somewhere which is not covered. It is covered by you and you don't see it. There is a covering involved. So the covering is an important thing, because it doesn't mean that the vastu itself is not there. It's almost like, you can cover up the sun and make a dark room out of it. This is what happens to these youngsters these days. My son will come in one day, and it's very interesting, these kids, he's not a kid anymore, he's in his late 40s. And it's a difficult life, I tell you, because I can see, first of all, they are working day and night through the work. India, my son was telling me that I have to call India at 8 o'clock at night time. We were having a party and he says, I'm sorry, I have to go home because it's an important phone call. Night and day they're working. There's no limits that, from 8 to 5, after 5 o'clock. They're working full time. Then both the spouses usually are working. On my son's case, that's not the case, but both spouses. They're kids who are so active. It's a very busy life. They don't get enough sleep. So sleep is very much in his mind, very much. And then he will sometimes call us in the morning and says, Mom and Dad, how did you sleep last night? Hey, I slept well. I have no problems. I don't know why you're asking. Why? Because he's got a problem. He's got a problem. And so the other day, I think a few months ago, he came into our bedroom and he says, you guys, you have to redo all the drapes in your room. So we said, why? What's happening? He says, good. It is not dark enough. You have to cover the sun. Don't you want to sleep in the morning when it is dark? So we said, no, we enjoy getting up early in the morning. It's good. This is what is called avarana. That the sun is up at 7 or 8 o'clock, but you don't see it. So therefore, this is an important thing, really. And the funny part is that you can postulate it for other things. But how can it be for myself? This is the Srishti of Ishvara. That's the 10th man example. That yes, it is possible to be confused about yourself. Very possible. This is the avarana. So therefore, going back to the main topic, that it's not as though the sun yourself is not the sun, but through ignorance you are covering it. You're covering it. And now you have to do some things to remove the covering. Remove the covering. And there is a certain growth involved in removing the covering. Here Swami Maheshananji gives a very funny example, really. I don't know how he gets all these. He says that suppose there is a very beautiful woman standing in front of you, very pretty, young, 19-year-old, and very beautiful, and and she's very accomplished and so on. And there are two brothers that go in to see her. One of them is 10 years old, and the other one is 20 years old. He says the reaction of the two is going to be totally different. The 10-year-old whose passions have not yet been aroused will just look at her as another woman, another person, as an auntie. The 20-year-old will say, oh, wow, this is somebody I can marry. And then you start to introduce yourself to her. Totally different. Yeah. So, Swamiji says that really speaking, why is it that the 20-year-old is so attracted to her? Because he has gotten older and his equipment have changed completely, his passions have changed and so on, and he has grown up to become a human being who's very attracted to this young girl. So the young girl remaining, this is the point, the growth of the individual. And so this is the funny part. Swamiji says what you need to do is to grow to appreciate the self. And it takes some work to remove the avarana. So this is a huge topic, huge topic. So for example, in one of the Upanishads, it says that, and so here, everybody uses some words, some concepts to do this. All the acharyas have their what is called a different prakriya. Prakriya means methodology. Here, Swami Maheshananji's favorite word, comes up again and again, I've been noticing it, is what is called ekagrata. Single-mindedness. Ekagrata. Ekagrata means a focus, single-mindedness focus. And if you pursue that, and so this is ekagrata and single-mindedness is to be done after you have understood the whole thing. You cannot do this without, because this is what would be called a nididhyasanam. Because without doing shravanam and mananam, shravanam and mananam means to understand the logic of it. Prema aspadam yataha, ananda source. The fact that all of the things we talked about, all of this has to be done first. But still you do not see, it's not as though you'll say, aha, I see, from now on, I'm not going to be bothered by anybody else. It's not going to happen right away. Why not? Because ekagrata is not there yet. It's a fact. It's an avarana on the very swarupa. So that question is answered in a very meaningful way, that why is it that I do not I go after silly things when in fact the very source of joy is myself? It is because from the standpoint of falling in love with this 19-year-old, I'm a child. I don't have the passion and the equipment to really appreciate what that girl can mean to me in my life as a future wife. No. You have no appreciation. You haven't grown up to that point. And you won't until you spend the time. You also become a 20-year-old. Then you find an attractive girl in front of you. That's a different matter altogether. And so therefore, this is all pointed out in our Shastra in different ways. Here a quotation is given. I don't remember which Upanishad it is from. It says, Tam etam vedanta veda anuvachanena brahmanaha vividichanti yagyena danena tapasa anashakena. So, vividishanti. Vividishanti means veditum icchanti. An intense desire to know the self appears. When does it appear? Veda ananuvachanena. Veda anuvachanena. By following the words of the Shruti. And yagyena, danena, tapasa. Your whole lifestyle has to be, from very beginning I pointed out that the purpose of this whole course of the first chapter of Panchadashi is that you will hopefully become less dependent on outside things and more appreciative of things that you already are. This is the purpose of the course. And it's a slow process. Your mind also, it raises objections. What are you talking about? You've had all your life and you're not satisfied. Let's go after things, trips, and this, that, or the other. This is a very natural thing. And to turn back from it and say, no, I'm okay the way I am. This takes a long time, a lot of application. This is what is called ekagrata. And this is why, despite all the conceptual introduction and so on, it waits for a while until you're ready. But the fact of the matter is, the goal that we are all trying to reach, whether or not we are studying Vedanta or not, by studying Vedanta you simply make it a little bit more focused and so on. We all want to be completely independent of all factors. And it's possible. So with this, a brief introduction to Ananda Rupata of Samvit is now finished. So we have done Sat Rupata, Chit Rupata, and Ananda Rupata. And we'll go from here next time. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityo Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om.
This
Sorry.
this avarana you're talking about, is it same as Maya?
It is part of Maya. It's a very, very fundamental part of Maya. But avarana means that there is some kind of a covering that does not allow you to see the truth. Yeah, that's all. Yeah, it is. Maya is, yes, it causes it. And so the Maya has both avarana and vikshepa shakti. So both of this is the avarana. Yeah. Kalpana?
I have two questions.
Yeah.
Because avaranam came up, can we say avaranam could be the ego and the desires, intense desires for outside things?
Yes, it is. It's a starting of that. So it's a gradual process. We have to free ourselves of the intensity of our activities, and but it's a push-pull kind of a thing, because your mind also is requesting that, okay, if you ask me to give up my infatuation with these things, you better replace it with something else. Otherwise, I'll go back to it. And so, and that you have to, this is where buddhi and manaha come in. So buddhi means that your sense of understanding has to take over. It is very much like, because as Swami Tattvavedananda says, that think of your mind as a child. If the child is just running, no, I must have ice cream and so on and so forth, then someone will say, no, not today. You've already had some dessert and too many sweets, not good for you. Otherwise, the child will just go for things. So similarly, the infatuation for things have to be arrested. So this is why all the parents say that stop playing silly games because you have some studying to do. So people say, why should I do study? That's very unpleasant. You will see that later. If you don't study, you're going to spoil your life. And so if you want to go to a good school and do well and so on, just trust me, you have to do that. So similarly here also, we have to guide our own mind and say, enough. Now let me go into the real source of joy. But the mind says, but I don't see any real source of joy. It will come. Success will come. Just stick with me. And so you follow so this is what is called Veda Anuvachanena. I mean, you have to find out how to do it and so on and so forth. And your second question?
Yeah. And the last thing you said in that, intense desire to know will come through Vedas and then by Yagna Danta.
Yes.
The Yagna here, would that mean the Panchamaha Yagna, like Deva Yagna, Pitu Yagna?
Correct. So I think in simple terms, we've been studying that in Swami Paramarthananda's commentary on the Bhagavad Gita also, very nicely done. I think what it says is that we have to bring Ishvara into our lives. Because there is a missing ingredient. The whole thing looks totally distorted unless you bring the fundamental creator into your life. Then the whole thing becomes more meaningful. So the life should be an offering. Yajna means an offering. This is what it means. So any very fundamental yajna is that there is a person who offers, and you offer some dravyas, and you offer it to someone. This is what the constituents of a yajna is. So here the word yajna means offering something for Ishvara and getting his prasada back. And ultimately what this offering is, that I have to give up my sense of limitation as a human being. That is the ultimate offering. Very difficult to offer, but that's what we have to do. Otherwise, I have to give up the sense that I'm a room space. If I don't do that, then I'm already Ishvara. Ishvara's prasada is always with me. But I'm the one that is blocking it by just clinging on to something which is very silly. So in that sense, the yajna, the whole life has to be reoriented and made important, because you can't fool it. You can't, Ishvara is one person, you can fool everybody else. But you can make a sort of like a pratigya that I don't quite understand it, but make sure that I slowly do it with sincerity and so on and so forth. But ultimately you have to, through the study, you have to see how is the Ishvara. So the karma phaladata, karma yajna, all of these have to be done. And so that's what constitutes the word yajna. Yeah. And this is very well explained in the 4th chapter, which we are actually doing. So there it is dravya yajna. So you can do some dravya yajna, just your karma yajna. Ultimately, you have to do jnana yajna. Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitramiha vidyate. So karmas cannot completely wash away the effects of the previous life and so on. Jnanam alone. Jnana means waking up from the dream. In the dream, you cannot completely be bereft of all the problems of the dream. But it is possible to invalidate the dreamer itself. And that invalidation of the dreamer is due to the offering of the human being, of the jiva, the jivatvam. This is the ultimate jivatvam, ultimate offering. So that's what the meaning of yajna is. Yep. No one is asking more questions because they said, if this guy speaks for another 10 minutes, we're going to be late. I should keep my answers short so that you're more encouraged to ask questions. Otherwise, I give a 5-minute answer, then they'll say, oh. Yeah.
I think I know what your answer is, but I just want some clarification. That we go through the main milestones in our life, marriage or whatever. We lock ourselves into through traditional whatever ceremony. So then we are already putting some limitations on ourselves, and those so whatever vows etc. that we make, whichever
right. So what's your question?
So then they are completely contrary to what our objective is.
Oh, the thing is that we are dependent on our samskaras, previous samskaras. So the reason you got married is because of your previous samskaras, that you didn't protest it enough. If you really wanted to be free in your life, you would have told your parents that, listen, I do not want to get married. Is that clear to you or not? And they'll cry for a couple of days and stomp their feet and so on. If your samskaras were to be free, that's what would have happened. But they were not. You went along with it. And now you have to and you went along with it, and the consequences of that are enormous. To have a married life is not an easy thing, and so on and so forth.
That has its own teaching.
Yeah, I mean, if you approach it the right way, then it's a pavitram. So all it's nahi jnanena pavitram iha vidyate. Sadrisham pavitram may not be, but asadrisham pavitram may be there. So everything that we do, getting married is a great dharma, because otherwise you do silly things and you don't have relationships and you don't have children. Having children is a very big thing, so that they ask you to have responsibility. So all those are all ordained so it should not be looked upon as a limitation, not a conflict by any means. It's all part of, it's a flow. Samskaras are all a flow. And
But Guruji, I meant in terms of what our traditions have actually created, that we have designed, that this is what the vows of marriage are vidhis, what they...
in general, that is true, yes, of course. But it doesn't mean that you cannot be, more difficult for girls. But there's no reason why you cannot be a sadhvi. In your well, either even if you don't get married, you see, you have so all those are samskaras. You find women and men who feel, I don't need to get involved. I'm okay the way I am.
It's renunciation.
Yeah, so they are born with it, but all comes from the previous life. If you haven't thought through that, then any pressure by anyone, you meet some good-looking boy and you say, oh, maybe I should get married to him. You don't realize what you're getting into, but you do. So, but anyway, all this is where Ishvara's flow also Ishvara's presence also comes in, because nothing is done without the samskaras of where you are in your life, and all you can do is to keep improving your next step. So this is where the Gayatri mantra is, that may you please dhiyo yo naha prachodayat, may you instill those thoughts that are good for me. And I don't know how to do that myself, but I need your help. So make sure you flow through me in doing my next steps. Whatever is done, I understand it. But the next step should be to turn the attention to the self. This is the best way to do that. Okay. So we are not meeting next Tuesday, right? On the 26th. Not meeting. And we'll meet next year, whenever the Tuesday is. Yeah, this is for people on the online. Please be aware that we are not having the next Tuesday evening class a week from now, but we will resume it 2 weeks from now. Okay. Second, I think.